Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is your lecture number 2, background to demand analysis. We were talking about this concept of utility. We discussed this utility is a very important factor which determines the demand of the people in the market. And we were discussing about it that the utility means this part the satisfaction that you get from anything. Like, say for example, the water has got the utility of satisfying your want of thirst. Food has got the utility of satisfying your want of hunger. Clothes have got the utility of covering your body. And similarly, like the pen has got the utility of writing. And similarly, the mobile phone has got a lot of utilities. Like, say for example, you can talk to other people with mobile phones. You can have got a lot of other features into this mobile phones, and mobile phones are serving, say for example, a lot of purposes. And the people have got the utility. Like, say for example, some people have got a utility of having, like, a camera into this mobile phone. Some people basically like mobile phones because they actually provides them a kind of like, notebook. Some people use that mobile phone for the calling. For some people use mobile phone for watching videos. And there are a lot of uses basically of the mobile phones as well. So this is what basically is, that's what basically determines the demand of the mobile phone. The demand actually all over the world is continuously rising. Now everything is happening online, and especially after this COVID-19 pandemic, things basically have gone so much online. It's now the world actually has become quite new, so demands actually are rising. Demands for electronic gadgets, demand for computers, demand for mobile phones. And like we were discussing about the utility, the utility is a kind of a satisfaction that you get from the use of something. And you can understand this, that the utility is something that is subjective. Like, say for example, how much you enjoy your mobile phone and how much I enjoy my mobile phone, they are different. And like the enjoyment that you have of your mobile phones when you are young is different. The enjoyment that you have got from your mobile phone when you're old is different. Similarly, in the morning, the utility of the mobile phone is different. In the evening, the utility of the mobile phone is different. So more or less, like, it's a subjective concept. By the subjective, we means, like, it depends on the subject we are talking about, depends on the connecting conditions. Basically, we talk about, like, say for example, when you buy a mobile phones, how much are you willing to pay for a mobile phone? How much are you willing to pay for a camera of a phone? How much are you willing to pay for a memory of the phone? How much are you willing to pay for the screen size of the phone? How much are you willing to pay for the, like, the weight of the mobile phone? How much are you willing to pay for the backup that your battery of the phone provides? They are all basically come together, and that determine that how much are you willing to pay for the mobile phones. And that's what we discussed in the last class, that the utility can be measured in terms of the willingness to pay. The willingness to pay means, like, how much are you willing to pay for something? How much are you willing to pay for mobile phones? That determines your utility from the mobile phones. Like, there are so many people who do not want to use the camera function. They are very much less willing to pay for the camera of the mobile phones. Like, if a camera if a mobile phones actually has got a very good camera, and but it actually, like, in its price is very high because of the camera, they don't buy it. Similarly, some people give so much utility, or they are willingness to pay, they have got so much willingness to pay for high resolution camera, HD cameras, and they generally pay a lot of money for the phone, like, just for the sake of camera, like, how much megapixel, how many megapixel that camera is of, and what kind of photos you can take from it, what kind of memory it has got. So it all depends on the willingness to pay. How much are you willing to pay for the camera of the phone? How much are you willing to pay for the battery size? Say for example, some of the people are willing to pay a lot for the battery size. They want actually battery to survive 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. They want they actually hate charging mobile phones again and again. They don't want actually their mobile phones go out of charge every, like, few hours, or every few, like, every few minutes basically. So they actually pay a lot of money for the battery size. So this is all the willingness to pay. That's what basically these all organizations are caching for. Like, they are trying to determine how much people are willing to pay for cameras, how much people are willing to pay for battery size, how much people are willing to pay for the screen size, how much people are willing to pay for the color of the font. Like say, for example, you know that some of the colors of the fonts are cheaper, but some of the colors basically are expensive. Something similar happened with the cars. Like say, for example, some exterior colors of the cars are cheaper, some exterior colors of the cars are expensive. Why do they charge different price for the different colors of the cars? Although the car is the same, the engine capacity is the same, utilities are the same. The only difference between the two cars is the color, the exterior color. Like one is a white car, other is a pink car, say for example, or the purple car, or red car, or black car. So they basically charge different price for that. So that is basically, you know, like this is, they do it because the people actually have got different kind of willingness to pay for different kind of, like, you know, exterior colors. So this is what basically the marketing strategy is, and that's where the economics is so strong, which actually, like, you know, helps you devising a strategy in which you can maximize your profits. You can always increase your profits by finding out that what people are willing to pay, what people are willing to pay for. You know, what are they willing to pay for? Like, you know, are they willing to pay for the size of the font or size of the car, capacity of the engine? Like say for example, nowadays the most popular car in Pakistan is, do you know which is the most popular car these days in Pakistan? Do you have any idea, like, you know, which car is the most like, you know, in demand and people are buying that car a lot? And why is there so much demand for that car?
सर डिपेंड करता है कि कौन किस कैटेगरी के जो है ना फॉल कर रहा है कार. अगर लो कैटेगरी है तो उसमें ऑल्टो बिक रही है
जी. Generally, you know, like the
और
Alto 660 cc.
660 सीसी की बिक रही है. इससे थोड़ा ऊपर जाते हैं तो कल्टस है,
जी जी.
वैगनार है. इस तरीके से डिमांड हर एक स्टेज की एक डिमांड है. एक मार्केट को कैप्चर किया हुआ है हर एक डिमांड.
हाँ, लेकिन ये कि generally आजकल मतलब the people who basically were driving even the luxury cars, they basically are switching to the Alto 660 cc because of the engine capacity. You know, like the engine capacity is 660, is fuel consumption is low. So there are different kinds of the willingness of the pay of the different people. Like, you know, if you look at the Corolla and Cultus, you know, Corolla is of course that is always all-time favorite car. And you know, but the thing, what actually I'm trying to tell you is that these days basically people value to fuel consumption. Like say for example, how much is the fuel is? It's 150 rupees per liter. So it was around 160 rupees per liter a few days ago. And like, you know, if you want to drive a car, like say for example, if you're driving 1.6 or 1.8 or 2 like, you know, liter car, or 3 liter car, or 3.5 liters car, or 5, or like above that car, like, you know, you actually have to spend a lot of fuel on it. And the cost goes quite up. Like it depends, of course, like, you know, as the Mursaleen was saying as well, that there are some different kinds of income groups which actually don't bother about it, but they are basically, like, you know, they actually value luxury, they value size of the car, they value, you know, like the speed of the car. There are a lot of things basically you value for, but generally people value different kind of things. That is very quite correct. But these days, if you talk to the people, like, you know, the automobile companies, the most famous car, like, you know, which you find a lot on the roads as well, like, you know, it's Alto 660 cc. And it's something, you know, like that's what something, how much people are willing to pay for it. So it is something, you know, like very much a kind of a thing. So you can, as a businessman, always help to devise your pricing strategy by looking at how much people are willing to pay for something. So we were discussing about it, the diminishing margin utility, and I left you with a question perhaps, that why, like, you know, is money also have got this particular kind of does money also follow this law, the law of diminishing margin utility? Did you do some research on it? Okay, so for the money, you know, like for different things, this law, for everything, this law is valid. But for some of the things, basically, this particular kind of a point comes a bit late. Like say, for example, for some of the things, your utility starts falling, like, you know, with a very small number of increments. But for some things, basically, when that gets very large quantity, like, you know, then your utility starts falling. Like say, for example, for the money, if you talk about the money, basically the money actually has got a lot of utility. People, but like there is always like the lesser enjoyment. Like say for example, the first salary that you get perhaps has got a lot of utility for you, but gradually your salary increases, and at certain point of time, and after certain point of time, the increment to the salary does not like excite you so much. And like that happens, but that happens after some time. Like it doesn't happen very quickly. Like it does not happen as it happens with some other things. But the money also has got like by the diminishing utility, the extra enjoyment that you get with extra dollar or extra money. So do you agree with this? So as we are talking about this law of diminishing marginality holds for everything. So as for money, the money basically like loses its attractiveness. Of course, it remains attractive over your whole life, but it loses its attractiveness over the time. Like the first 1,000 rupees that you earn perhaps have got a lot more enjoyments that you like if you just earn the same 1,000 rupees in the middle of your career, or in the like in the when you are at the top of your career. So the diminishing marginality has got a very much kind of law that holds everywhere. Like say for example, if you have got already 3 pair of shoes available with you at home, how much attraction you will have for a 30% reduction on the price of shoes. Like say for example, this is what basically happens, that basically we are going to talk about. Like say for example, how much are you willing to pay for the first ice cream, and how much are you willing to pay for the second ice cream, and how much are you willing to pay for the third ice cream, and how much are you willing to pay for the fourth ice cream. If you see that this is continuously falling from 100 pence to 80 pence, 80 pence to 70 pence, and 70 pence to 50 pence, your willingness to pay is continuously falling. And what does it say? Like it says like because your utility with the ice cream is falling. Like the first ice cream you enjoy more. Like say for example, the first ice cream you can buy at higher price, but at the same time, if you are asked to buy the second ice cream with the first ice cream, like say for example, if you go to the ice cream parlor and you want to buy an ice cream, like you are willing to pay, say for example, 100 rupees for the first ice cream, but they tell you that if you buy 2 ice creams, you can get like if you say for example, the person sitting on the other side of the counter asks you to buy 2 ice creams. Now if you ask him that how much are the 2 ice cream, if he says 200 rupees, will you buy 2 ice creams? आपने एक 100 रुपए की आइसक्रीम लेने के लिए गए हुए हैं, आप उससे वो दूसरा जो आपकी तरफ जो बैठा हुआ है काउंटर पे, वो कहता है 2 आइसक्रीम्स खरीदे, आपके 2 आइसक्रीम्स कितने की? उसका 200 रुपीस की. Will you buy those 2 ice creams for 200 rupees? No. You will only buy 2 ice creams if he gives you some kind of incentive. Like say for example, if he says you, the person sitting on outside the other side of the counter tells you that if you buy 1 ice cream, you will get it for 100 rupees. But if you buy 2 ice creams, you will get it for, say for example, 160 rupees. So 160 rupees means that 1 ice cream will cost you 80 rupees. Or if you buy 3 ice creams, you will get them for 210 rupees. So every ice cream unit will cost you around 70 rupees, say for example. And if you buy 4 ice creams at the same time, it will cost you around 200 rupees, and you will get like a 50 rupees per ice cream. So this is something is related to the law of demand, and this is something businesses have to do. If as a business you want people buy more, like say for example, अगर आप U-phone या कोई भी मोबाइल फोन है, उसका आप एक टॉप अप करवाते हैं, like you say for example get it recharged for 100 rupees, you get very few minutes, very few SMS, or very few like data bundles, data like data kind of MBs. But if you buy a bigger bundle, like say for example, you buy a package of 600 rupees, 700 rupees, 1,000 rupees, more than that. So what do you get? You get a lot of minutes, you get a lot of text messages, facility of texting a lot of messages, you get a lot of MBs for using the internet, and you get a lot of things, and that is what basically forces people to not go for the top up of 100 rupees rather than paying 700 rupees or 1000 rupees for the package. Now, why they make packages? Why do you think these all mobile phone companies offer you packages? आप बताएंगे इसका जवाब?
To earn more profit, sir.
Obviously, the objective is to earn profit for everything. Like, why do they package them? Like, why do they give you, like, say, for example?
Because वो पूरा पैकेज यूटिलाइज नहीं कर पाएंगे, जितना वो पैकेज देते हैं वो इतना यूटिलाइज नहीं कर पाएंगे उसको.
ये बात तो बिल्कुल दुरुस्त है, लेकिन that is what something, like people give, like say for example, how much value you give to the first 20 minutes of talking. Like आपको 20 मिनट की जो टॉकिंग है, आप उसको कितना वैल्यू करते हैं? वो ज्यादा वैल्यू करते हैं, क्योंकि आपको 20-25 मिनट सपोज करें आपको जरूरत पड़ती है फोन करने की और आपको जरूरत पड़ती है. लेकिन अगर कोई आपकी कॉलिंग जो रिक्वायरमेंट है, से फॉर एग्जांपल 1 वीक में 20 मिनट्स है, you need 20 minutes calling time, but if the company tells you to buy 100 minutes calling time, तो अगर कंपनी आपको ये कहती है कि आपको 20 मिनट्स आपका कॉलिंग टाइम की रिक्वायरमेंट है, लेकिन यू बाय 100 मिनट्स कॉलिंग टाइम, तो उसको क्या करना पड़ेगा आपको?
सर रेट कम करने पड़ेंगे.
रेट कम करने पड़ेंगे. That is what happens, and that is where you have got less willingness to pay for the rest of the 80 minutes, because you needed only 20 minutes. Like say for example, जाहिर है कि आपको जो सपोज करें आपका एवरेज जो कंजम्पशन है पर वीक का, you actually have to make 20 minutes call every week, say for example. Like the different calls that you make actually require 20 minutes of calling time, but the company wants you to buy 100 minutes calling time. That 100 minutes calling time is not, the company will not be able to sell it if they do not offer you the discount on it. And why do they need to give the discount for it? Because if you look at the table actually in front of you, you have got less willingness to pay for higher amounts of the goods. जितनी ज्यादा क्वांटिटी होगी उतनी ही आपकी लेस विलिंगनेस होगी उनकी पे करने के लिए. मिसाल के तौर पर आपके पास पेयर ऑफ शूज की बात आप करें, you have got one, like you don't have got any pair of shoes. The first pair of shoes, like say for example, if you get an advertisement that the Bata company or some company is offering you 10% discount on the shoes, you will rush to that shop and you will buy the first pair. Suppose at the same time another company also offers 10% discount, you will not go to for another shoe, but you will perhaps think about another pair of shoes if you get somehow 20% discount. Now, if you have got two pair of shoes and now basically you are looking at the advertisements nowadays, everywhere you have got these advertisements when you use phone, when you open your mobile phone, when you open your laptops, when you go to anywhere in the market, you have got a lot of advertisements. Now the businesses want you to buy third pair of shoes. Now you will not be attracted on 10%, 20%, rather perhaps you might think about the third pair of shoes if the discount is 50%. Does it happen with you? Does this, like you buy, like say for example, the number of dresses that you buy, like say for example, if we talk about the women, how much, like how would you attract to buy more dresses? Like what kind of attraction you get, like you need to buy another dress when you already have got few dresses available at home. Sorry.
सर सेल डिस्काउंटेड प्राइसेस पे होता है तो वहां पे ज्यादा अट्रैक्टेड होती है.
कितना परसेंट सेल पे आप अट्रैक्ट होंगे? मतलब थर्ड ड्रेस के लिए 10% पर, 20% पे, 30% पे, 40%, 50%, 60%, what?
40%.
Alright. Okay, so और जाहिर है कि उससे ज्यादा अगर आप the company wants you to buy more, even more dresses, it will have to give you even more discounts for 40%, 50% or something like that. So this is what something is a willingness to pay, because you have got a less utility for something that basically you are willing to pay. And this is total willingness to pay. For one ice cream, you are willing to pay 100 rupees or pence. For 2 ice creams, you are willing to pay how much? 180. For 3, let's see here what is happening with the total utility. Total utility is increasing, but this total utility is increasing with decreasing rate. Total utility is increasing with decreasing rate. Look at here. Now, the first ice cream you are willing to buy for 100 pence. The two ice creams you are willing to buy for how much? 180 pence. So how much the total utility has, like, the total price willing to pay for another has increased by 80. Now, from this to this, your willingness to pay for the third unit actually has increased by what? 70. And for the third, it has increased only by 50. Does it making sense? You know what actually we are trying to tell you here is that whenever you buy more shoes, more pair of shoes, whenever you buy more dresses, whenever you buy more ice creams, your total utility increases, but that increment in the total utility happens at a decreasing rate. Like here, your total utility is increasing from 100 to 180, 180 to 250, 250 to 300, but the rate of the change actually in that is diminishing from, like, the first one is giving you 100, the second is giving you 80 units utility, the third one is giving you 50, 70 units utility, and the fourth is giving you 50 units utility. I hope I am making sense to you guys. If you have got any questions, please do ask. Now, if you look at the graph here, so this graph will actually tells you that how your total utility and marginal utility are related, and what happens with your marginal utility when your total utility is increasing still. This is the graph for the total utility. Like for the 0 units, your total utility will be 0. For the first units, your total utility will be what?
7.
7, this one. And for the second unit, sorry, this is around, the second unit is 11. For third unit, it is 13, and similarly like that. Okay. So now look at the marginal utilities. Like, say for example, the first unit that you bought gave you 7 units of utility. The second gave you how much?
11.
11. From 7 to 11, the difference is additional utility that you get from the unit 1 to unit
4.
2 is 4. All right. From unit 2 to unit 3, it is 2. From unit 3 to unit 4 is 1. From unit 4 to 5 is 0. And from 5 to 6 is -1. What do you think? Can marginal utility be negative? The additional enjoyment that you get from anything, can it be negative as well? क्या ख्याल है आपका? नेगेटिव हो सकती है किसी चीज की यूटिलिटी?
सर हो तो सकती है, लेकिन अभी याद नहीं आ रहा क्या है, क्योंकि पढ़ा तो है.
Anybody else who remembers this? I think it's very easy concept, like say for example, when you eat, gradually, like, initially, like, you enjoy more, but after some time your enjoyment starts falling. Like the enjoyment of the first apple is more than the second apple. Enjoyment of the second apple is more than the third apple. Similarly, the enjoyment of the third apple is more than the fourth apple. If you keep eating apples at the same time, what will happen? अगर आप खाना खाते रहेंगे, शुरू में तो खाने की आपकी यूटिलिटी जो है वो बढ़ तो रही होगी, लेकिन कम रेट से, लेकिन एक वक्त के बाद अगर आप मजीद खाना खाते रहेंगे तो क्या होगा?
वॉमिट हो जाएगी
जी, आपको ऑपोजिट इफेक्ट आना शुरू हो जाएगा. आपकी हेल्थ इंप्रूव होने की बजाय आपकी हेल्थ खराब हो जाएगी. So this is what actually related to the like negative utility. जिस तरह मिसाल के तौर पर अगर आपके पास बहुत सारी चीजें आपके पास हों, आपके पास फॉर एग्जांपल एक शख्स है जो कि जिसमें सिर्फ एक शख्स गाड़ी चलाने वाला है, उनके घर में 3 गाड़ियां हों, what will be the utility of the third car or fourth car? It will be negative. वो जो है वो खड़े खड़े खराब होगी. Are you getting my point? उसकी जो utility है वो negative utility है. Like you have got one person, like who actually can drive the car or who needs the car at home, but you have got 3 or 4 cars standing in your porch. What would happen with the additional utility of the 4th car or 5th car? that is a very important thing, like, that we should realize. And that's why people are less willing to pay for extra units. And that is what happens with your additional utility. And after some time, your utility actually, like, your utility now, what does it show? It shows that your total utility is increasing all the time, but it is increasing with
decline.
the decreasing rate. So that is why this is concave to the origin. And concavity is a condition when you have a situation when you basically your curve increases with decreasing rate. I hope I am making sense to you guys. So what are we trying to learn from these examples? The red curve in the diagram is showing you the marginal utility. Whenever we use the term marginal, by the marginal, we always means additional. And by the additional, we mean this. What do we mean by this? Like, say, for example, if you are moving from, like, say, for example, from 2 to 3 units, the total utility is increasing by two utils. So this is additional utility that you get by consuming one more unit. Additional utility that you get by consuming 3 units at the place of 2 units. So this is change in total utility divided by change in quantity. This is what the marginality curve is, and that's what the actually depicted on the total utility curve. So this is what the marginality curve is. Okay, I show you this curve. Now, willingness to pay and demand. Like the demand curve that you see and you would have seen in your microeconomics courses is based on the marginal utility curve. The marginal utility curve, as you have seen, is how does it look like? It's a downward sloping curve. And what does this downward slope tell you? What does this downward slope tell you? What does this downward slope tell you? What does the downward slope of marginal utility curve tell you? It tells you that if the people give less value to more consumption, the downward slope of the marginal utility curve shows you that people give less value to more quantities. So if you want to sell more, if you want people to demand more, if you want people to buy more, like, to have more demand, what you should do? If you want people to have more demand, what do you think what you should do? You will have to give them discount in terms of prices because they give less value to more quantities. So if you want them to buy more, you will have to give them some kind of discount. And if you give them discount, you will be able to get more demand from the market. I hope I make sense to you guys. Before break, we were talking about the this relationship between the total utility and marginal utility. And we were discussing that, like that how the total utility increases. And we discussed, that this total utility increases with decreasing rate. And this decreasing rate can be seen like, with this curve, which is the marginal utility curve. And what we were learning from this, that, like that the consumers, where do consumers maximizes their utility? Like the consumers maximize their utility when the price is equal to marginal utility. What does it mean? Like consider a situation that if the price is greater than marginal utility, or price is less than marginal utility. First of all, discuss this situation. What do you think? What will happen if the price a person is paying for something is less and the additional enjoyment that he is getting from that good is more? What that person will do? Then we will talk about this situation when the price which a person is paying, say for example, for a pair of shoes, and the enjoyment, like the price which he is paying is more, and the enjoyment he is getting from the next pair of shoes is less. What he will do in this particular situation, number one, and in this situation, number two? What do you think? What will happen in the situation number one? I was telling you that, you know, like this price, a person maximizes his utility when his price, his cost of consumption is equal to the enjoyment from consumption. We can discuss two other situations as well here. The situation number one, where the price that he pays is less than the extra enjoyment he gets from the consumption of goods. In this case, he will not decrease his consumption, rather he will increase the consumption, or nor he will decrease, or neither he will decrease nor he will stop. He will just increase the consumption. In the situation number two, he will decrease his consumption. But in this particular kind of a situation, which actually is given here, this situation, what will happen in this situation? He will stop his consumption, because at this particular point of time, his cost is exactly equal to benefit. Now, if he consumes more, if he actually goes for further consumption, what will happen?
सर प्राइस ज्यादा पे करनी पड़ेगी, लॉस होगा उसमें, मतलब प्राइस ज्यादा पे करनी पड़ेगी तो रिलेटिव नहीं होगी ना.
He will be having losses if he just continues consumption from this particular point basically. Very good. Now look at this. This is a graph which is showing, like, you know, we are measuring marginal utility and price on y-axis and quantity on x-axis. As you can see, your marginal utility curve is a downward sloping curve. Now look at this region. Look at region number one and look at region number two. So here. This is region number two, I'm sorry. Okay. This is region number one and this is region number two. What is happening in the region number one? Like here, like here, like here. Now here, what is happening? His additional enjoyment is greater than the 70 rupees. Here also his additional enjoyment is greater than 70 rupees. Here also his additional enjoyment is greater than 70 rupees. So what is he doing? He is increasing his consumption. And in this region, what he will do? Here, his price is higher and utility is lower. Say for example, 50 here, 40 here, 30 here. So in this particular case, he will reduce his consumption. And the point he will actually optimize will be the point where his additional utility is equal to the price. And that is how we determine the demand curve of an individual. And before the break, I was telling you that a person's basically demand according to the willingness to pay. Like, you know, they generally are willing to pay less for higher amounts and they're willing to pay more for lesser amount. Because when they consume less amount, their utility is more than the price they pay. So if the price falls, they increase their consumption. All right. So you can ask any questions in between, like, you know, if you have got any confusion or you feel anything like, you know, that you are not able to comprehend. This marginal utility curve can be called the demand curve of the individual as well. And like, see here, like if the price is this, you are consuming at this one. If the price falls to P2, your marginal utility falls and you buy more consumption. All right, because the price is falling. And then the similar thing is like, you know, because you will be maximizing your utility at the point where price is equal to the marginal utility. You will be consuming at the point where price is equal to marginal utility. You will be consuming at the point and you will be maximizing your utility at the point where where the price is equal to the marginality. So if the price is P1, at this point your price and marginality are equal. If the price is P2, at this point your price and marginality are equal. And if the price is P3, your price and marginality are equal to at point C. Have you heard about consumer surplus? You see, consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between what are you willing to pay for something and what actually are you paying for it. What are you willing to pay for something? How much value you give to something? You know, like there are so many things available in the market, and everybody does not have got the same need of that particular good. Some people have got more need of it, some people have got less need of it. आप देखें मार्केट में जो सारी की सारी जो चीजें मिल रही होती हैं, आपका क्या ख्याल है, सबको उनकी एक जैसी जरूरत है? मिसाल के तौर पर एक जो पेन किलर मार्केट में मिल रहा है, उस पेन किलर की जरूरत किसको है?
जिसको पेन हो रहा होगा।
जिसको पेन हो रहा होगा। और अब पेन होने वाले में भी जो है वो जाहिर है उसको ज्यादा जरूरत होगी जिसको ज्यादा पेन हो रहा है, और जिसको पेन हो रहा है लेकिन कम हो रहा है उसको कम जरूरत होगी। बिल्कुल इसी तरीके से मार्केट में जो चीजें अवेलेबल हैं वो बेसिकली जाहिर है वो उनकी जरूरत लोगों को पड़ती है, लेकिन आप हर एक की जरूरत उनकी मुख्तलिफ है। एवरीबडी नीड्स लाइक यू नो डिफरेंट, लाइक से फॉर एग्जांपल डिजाइनर्स क्लोथ जो मार्केट में मिल रहे हैं उनकी आपको कितनी जरूरत है? अब जाहिर है दैट विल डिपेंड। हर किसी को डिजाइनर्स क्लोथ्स की जरूरत नहीं है, हर कोई डिजाइनर्स क्लोथ्स के अंदर यूटिलिटी तलाश नहीं करता। हर कोई ऐसा नहीं है कि जो कि ये सोचे कि जिस तरह की शर्ट उसने पहनी हुई है, जिस तरह की पैंट उसने पहनी हुई है, जिस तरह का प्रिंट उसके पास है, उस तरह का प्रिंट किसी और के पास ना हो। इसमें से मार्केट में देयर आर सो मेनी पीपल हु थिंक लाइक इट, दे गिव वैल्यू टू दिस। वो कितनी वैल्यू आप देते हैं चीजों की यूनिकनेस को, कितनी वैल्यू देते हैं आप चीजों की कंफर्ट को। देखिए मार्केट में जब आप गाड़ी खरीदने के लिए जाते हैं, जब आप कोई और चीज छोटी मोटी चीजें भी खरीदने के लिए जाते हैं, तो हर चीज की मुख्तलिफ किस्म की क्वालिटीज हैं, हर चीज की मुख्तलिफ किस्म की जो है वो डिमांड्स हैं, हर चीज की मुख्तलिफ किस्म की जो है वैरायटीज जो है वो अवेलेबल हैं। इन तमाम वैरायटीज में, इन तमाम चीजों के अंदर okay, so we were talking about this consumer surplus. You know what, that the consumer surplus is the difference between the willingness to pay and what actually are you paying for something. And as I was telling you that, like, you know, in the market that you basically is the goods are available, they are not needed by everyone at the same intensity. Like, so for example, some people need it more, some people need it less. Some people need this at the higher, like, you know, say for example, some people give value to the comfort, some people give value to the economy, some people give value to the, like, you know, color of the thing, some people give value to the quantity of the things, some people give the value to the quality, some people give the value to the quantity. So every customer in the market is same. Now, what happens when you go to buy at the shop? You know, like sometimes this happens that, like, you know, that you buy something expensive and your friend buys something cheaper. When do you think this happened? And why do you think this happened? That the same thing that you actually have bought, like you have bought expensive, but your friend has bought it cheaper. So the consumer surplus is the difference between what are you willing to pay and what are you actually paying. Sometimes, you know, your willingness to pay for something is higher because you give more value to it. Like, say for example, some particular kind of a device that you need, and you need it badly. Say for example, you want to take online class and you want to get some kind of gadget with which you want to take the class. Your need is higher as compared to the person who wants to buy that for fun, or that basically is something he wants to buy just for the, say for example, use, or just extra commodity or extra kind of a gadget. So you will be willing to pay more for it, and the person who is not buying it for some serious purpose perhaps will be willing to pay less for it. So the businesses generally try to differentiate their prices according to the willingness to pay of the people. Like, say for example, what happens with your calling charges on your mobile phones? Generally the calling charges of the mobile phones are higher during the day and lower during the night. Why do you think the same cellular company charges higher price during the day and lower price during the night? The cellular companies charge different price during the day and during the night on the basis of the willingness to pay of the people. During the day, generally people are willing to pay more because they have to make important calls. They have to make business calls or they have to make urgent calls. Whereas during the night, when they basically don't, their businesses have closed and they don't basically are not talking about the business, rather they are talking about, they are talking just basically like, just they are actually enjoying leisure. Then basically like, if you want them to use your mobile phone service, like, you have to give them incentive because they don't give value to that particular call so much. They are not willing to pay like 5 rupees per minute. They are not willing to pay 3 rupees or 4 rupees per minute. They will only be using your cellular company if they somehow get the discounted price. So the businesses try to maximize their profit during the day by increasing prices and during the night by decreasing prices. Like that is quite, you should understand this. The businesses maximize their revenues by increasing prices during the day and by decreasing prices in the night. How can you increase your revenue by decreasing prices? Because you can increase that revenue because by decreasing prices you attract a lot more demand. That will not be there. The demand will be zero if the price is kept same. If the prices are kept the same, the demand will become zero, like in the night. So if you want to have demand, like and you can sell your quantity of the minutes, so you can basically like decrease the prices. So the consumer surplus, generally like you give sometimes more value to it, but you get for lower prices. And that is what something the businesses try to squeeze your consumer surplus. This is the consumer surplus. You should always keep remember the consumer surplus is the area between the demand above the price line and below the demand curve. The area above the price line and below the demand curve is called the consumer surplus. And this consumer surplus shows you that how much are you willing to pay for certain units of commodity and how much are you exactly paying. So this particular triangle tells you about that what kind of consumer surplus are you enjoying here, the willingness to pay and actually amount you are paying. Okay. Now basically we are going to do the indifference curve analysis. This analysis you would have done in your microeconomics course. Does anybody remember the definition of indifference curve?
So when we are indifferent about two choices.
Very good. And when are you indifferent between the two choices or to consumption of the two bundles? When I was defining you the term utility, I told you that there are two ways of measuring utility or two ways of looking at the consumer choices. One way of making choices is that you are able to calculate or count the utility that you get from the consumption of something. Like say for example, if you eat an apple, how much utility you get from the consumption of that apple. This approach is called cardinal utility approach. Another approach, and you will choose between the apples and oranges on the basis of the utility that you get by consuming apples and oranges. The other method of making a choice is the ordinal utility, where you make order preferences. Like say for example, when you buy a soft drink, which soft drink you demand first? Which soft drink you demand first? आप सॉफ्ट ड्रिंक की शॉप पे जाते हैं तो सबसे पहले कौन सा ब्रांड को डिमांड करते हैं आप? कौन से वेरिएंट को डिमांड करते हैं आप लोग? Say for example, you like the most Pepsi, and if you don't get Pepsi, what you will go for? The next preferred brand, like say for example Mirinda or Coca-Cola or Tea or Dew or kind of other kind of the brands. So the order that you make is the order according to your preference. You like Pepsi the most and you like say for example the Mirinda the least, but this is your kind of a preferences. Like say for example, you will go for Pepsi
But if you don't get Pepsi, you will go for something else. And if you don't get that something else, you will go even for something else. And that you will keep coming down. And that is basically kind of a analysis that you do. And the indifference curve is basically the locus. Indifference curve is the locus of all those combinations of two goods that give you same amount of utility. Like here. If you look at this indifference curve, the point A shows that you are buying 6 oranges and 30 pears. Now, if you relocate and reallocate your bundle, like say, for example, you want to increase the consumption of your oranges and you decrease the consumption of pears. So you now basically at the point B, you are consuming 7 oranges and 24 pears. And that's point B. And the point C, D, E, F, they all basically are showing, the E point is showing that you are buying 13 oranges and 10 pears. Now, what is unique about these points, the point A, B, C, and D, E, and F, you are buying different bundles of pears and oranges, but what about the amount of utility that you are getting from that indifference, that bundles is the same. The utility that you are getting is the same on every point on this indifference curve. And you are just like, this is what basically the indifference curve is all about. So the indifference curve, as the name suggests, it is the curve that shows your indifference. Indifference is the opposite of difference. And difference means like, when you actually have got, like, say, for example, if you take B point different from C, C point different from D, and D point different from E, that will be a difference. But if you assume them, all of them same, like you are as good at point B as you are at A, you are as good at point C as you are at point B, and you are as good at point D as you are good at C. So that's what basically is called the indifference curve. The slope of this indifference curve is called marginal rate of substitution. The slope of this particular indifference curve is called marginal rate of substitution. At what rate you want to substitute one good with the other. So the slope of this indifference curve can be measured like this. Like, say, for example, at point A, you are consuming 30 pears and 6, say, for example, you are consuming 30 units of good Y and 6 units of good X. Now, if you want to increase the consumption of good X by 1 unit, you are willing to give up 4 units of good Y. Why do you think are you willing to give up 4 units of good Y to get 1 more unit of X? तो बताएगा आप में से?
Sir, question.
So you are willing to give up 4 units of Y to get 1 more unit of X because you already have got so much Y and so little X. When you have got so much of something that according to the law of diminishing marginal utility, its additional enjoyment is less. So you are willing to give up so much Y to get so few X. But as you move further down, if you move further down, now look at this. Now, if you have got 13X and you want to increase your 13 from 14, now how much Y are you willing to give up? Just 1 unit of Y. Why is that so? Why the willingness to sacrifice Y has fallen?
Sir, diminishing marginal utility की वजह से.
Yes, because now you have got very little Y, so you don't want to give up so much Y to get 1 unit of X. So this is the law which is called the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Like the other law that we studied was the law of diminishing marginal utility, and this is the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. On the top of the indifference curve, you are willing, your slope is more, but as you move down, your slope keeps falling. All right. So this is what something happens here. Now, how your utility increases, that actually can be shown with the indifference map. And indifference map means the higher indifference curve shows. What does the higher indifference curve show? The higher indifference curve shows the higher amount of utility that you get. So the above, the higher is the curve, the higher is the utility. Like say, for example, if you compare I1 with I2, I2 is giving you more utility than I1. I3 is showing the utility is higher than the utility at I2. And similarly, I5 is the highest amount of utility. If you are on the indifference curve I5, it means that your utility is the maximum or is the highest. But as you move down, if you move down, your utility falls. If you move up, your utility increases. So this is called indifference map, and this shows that in what direction your utility increases. Now, you must have learned different characteristics of the indifference curve. The first characteristic that we have already learned now is that this is convex to the origin. And the convexity to the origin actually happens because of the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Due to the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution, this actually curve is convex to the origin. Another characteristic of the indifference curve that you would have learned is that two indifference curves can never intersect each other. And why two indifference curves never intersect each other? Because we know that on every point of the indifference curve, the level of utility is the same. And at the lower indifference curve, the utility is low as compared to the higher indifference curve. So now what actually is happening at this point? Point A. What is happening at this point?
सर दोनों इंडिफरेंस कर्व के वो सेम हो गए जबकि होते नहीं है ना.
This is not a possible. Like say for example, you cannot, like say for example here, a consumer cannot be indifferent between point A and point C. A person cannot be indifferent between point A and point C because point A is on the both curves, point C is on the above curve and point B is on the below curve. So A is not you cannot have got the same and different utility at the same time. All right. So if this curve, like say for example, this curve is 1 and this curve is 2. This is showing 100.
कंपैरिजन ही नहीं हो सकता कोई.
बिल्कुल. This is showing 100 utils and this is showing 50 utils. At every point of this red curve, the utility will remain 50. And at every point of the blue curve, the utility will remain at 100. And if they somehow intersect each other, what is happening at point A? What is happening at point A?
बराबर हो जाते हैं.
ये possible नहीं है. 50 cannot be equal to 100. So it is impossible for the two indifference curves to intersect each other. So you have to make a choice between the one indifference curve or the other indifference curve. The two indifference curve cannot be the same. Now, what does the indifference curve shows? Indifference curve shows the wants. What do you want to achieve? Like say for example, if you look at this particular curve. Now, what does it show? Where would you like to go? Would you like to be on the indifference curve 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5? Where would you like to be? आप कौन से इंडिफरेंस कर्व पे जाना चाहेंगे? इंडिफरेंस कर्व 1 पे, 2 पे, 3 पे, 4 पे या 5 पे?
5 पे.
सर यहाँ मैक्सिमम लेवल 5 मिल रहा है.
Of course.
Maximum level of substitution.
Even if you can get, say for example, the higher indifference curve, say for example I6, I7 or I8 or whatever, you would like to go higher and higher and higher because you know that the utility that you will be getting from I5 is greater than I4. The utility that you are getting at I4 is greater than I3. And the utility that you are getting at I3 is greater than I2. And the utility that you're getting on I2 is greater than I1. So you would like to go at as far as possible. Like, you want to be consuming or you want to consume at this point or at this point or at this point. You want to go higher and higher and higher.
But what stops you going to highest indifference curve? What stops you going to the highest indifference curve?
सर हमारी एक बजट लाइन होती है, हमारे पास एक फिक्स रिसोर्सेज होती है ना,
जी।
रिसोर्सेज से ज्यादा हम स्पेंड कर नहीं सकते, तो उसी के ऊपर हमें रहना होता है।
जिस तरह मिसाल के तौर पर you want to buy a car and you would like to buy the best car available, like say for example you want to buy a Corolla, or you want to buy like say for example Mercedes, BMW, or a bigger car, say for example. आपकी जो utility है, sorry,
Suzuki Wagner.
Wagner is the best. So like you want to buy some good car. Of course, like you give value to the luxury. Like say for example, you want to, when you go to buy a car, you want to buy the best, like Civic or Corolla or BMW. If you go further, Audi or Mercedes or something like that. Of course, like these all cars which actually have got different capacities of engines and different like structures and luxury and like comfort. You want to get the best car, but what stops you buying the Mercedes car? What stops you buying the Mercedes car? Although like your utility will be of course very high if you buy the Mercedes car. What stops you from that?
The budget line.
The pocket that you have. How much money do you have? How much budget do you have? Like say for example, you are planning to dine with your family outside. You would like to dine in the best hotel in the town. Like say for example, you want to have a dinner at 5-star hotel, but what stops you going to the 5-star hotel?
The expensive food and the services.
Yeah, budget.
Budget.
That how much money do you have? So this is the budget line that shows you that how much maximum of X you can buy and how much maximum Y you can buy. And obviously, if you spend all of your money on X, the budget is your 30 pounds. If you spend all of that on X, the price of X is 2 pounds. So you will be able to buy 15 units of X. And if you spend all of your money on Y, because the Y costs you 1 pound, you can buy 30 units of Y. So if you go or spend all of your money on X, you buy 15 units. And if you spend all of your money on Y, you can buy 30 units of Y. But of course, you don't spend money on either of the goods. You make a combinations of them. And all those combinations that you can have is called your budget line. This is called your affordability region. This is your affordability region. Like what can you afford and what you, this is the area that shows that what you can afford. And this area shows, what does it show? What does this area show?
Above budget line.
The area,
Above budget line.
the above budget line that you cannot afford. All right.
Beyond budget line where you cannot buy.
Of course. So if you spend all of your money on Y, you can buy 30 units A and 0 units of X. And if you decrease your purchases of Y from 30 to 20, you can buy 5 units of X. So you can move to point B, then point C, and then point D. The point D is the point where you are spending all of your money on X and you are not spending anything on Y. This is the slope of the budget line. What is the slope of the budget line? PX over PY. The ratio between the prices of the two goods is your budget line. The ratio of the prices that you have, this is called the slope of the budget line. Okay. So what happens if your income increases?
So we can buy more goods, budget line.
Yeah, the budget
moves
line
upwards.
shifts upward, yes. So I hope you have done these all things already. So I'm just getting a bit quicker on it. Okay. So like with your income, you can buy more of X and more of Y because your budget line has changed. What happens if the price of any of the goods changes? Your budget line rotates on either x-axis or y-axis.
Yes, sir.
Like this, you can buy maximum 15 units of X when the price of X is $1 or £1. If the sorry, like initially, that was the price of X was $2, £2. I'm sorry. So with the £30 income, you could buy 15 maximum units of X. But now suppose that your price of X falls to £1. Now, how much maximum you can buy the X units? You can buy 30 units of X, because if you spend all of your
30.
income on X, and that actually you have got a rotation on the X axis. The optimum consumption point, where do you optimize?
So ना equal हो
जहां पे क्या इक्वल हो?
दोनों की कंजम्पशन और बजट लाइन पर.
जी, the maximum amount of goods that you can buy with the available income that you have. Like say for example, like where do you want to go? You want to go to the I-5, but you might be like having equilibrium at point I3, because I3 is the maximum indifference curve that you can afford with your income. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. Indifference curve tangent to the budget line.
Yes, difference curve is tangent to the budget line. So this is a budget line. And now what about the I4 and I2? Would you like to go to I4?
So we would like to, but we cannot due to the budget line.
We cannot go to the I4. And what about I2? Would you like to go to I2, back to the I2?
Level of satisfaction कम
Optimum
होता है.
consumption.
Utility कम हो जाती है.
Yes, your utility will be down, although you can afford or you can go to I2, but you would not like to go to I2 because at I2 your utility is less than I3. I hope it makes
Yes, sir.
sense to you guys. All right. So point T gives the maximum level of utility, and point R, S, U, V give a lower amount of utility. So whatever like you can get at R, S, U, V is less than what you can get at T, and T is the maximum amount of the goods that you can afford. So in this analysis, if you introduce the change in income, what happens if your income changes? So if your equilibrium is at this point A and your income increases, when your income increases, what happens? Your budget line shifts outwards. Now
Budget
you
line
can
shifts
afford,
outwards.
yes, since your budget line has moved outward, you can afford to go to the higher indifference curve from I1 to I2. Okay. And if your budget line further increases, you can go from I2 to I3 and I3 to I4. Are you getting my point? And the point, like, different equilibrium points with the different budget lines, that will show you the income consumption curve, how your income is being consumed on the X and Y. Here you can see that when your income increases, when your income is increasing, sorry, when your income is increasing, your consumption of X is increasing. What does it tell you about the good X? Your income increasing and your consumption of X is also increasing over the time. What does it tell you about the good X? What kind of good X is? X किस किस्म की good है?
सर जैसे बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है वीट
नॉर्मल गुड है। देखें इसको हम टेक्निकली वी कॉल इट अ नॉर्मल गुड।
नॉर्मल गुड।
अगर इनकम इंक्रीज होने से किसी चीज की कंजम्पशन कम हो तो वी कॉल इट एज इंफीरियर गुड।
इंफीरियर गुड।
समझ रहे हैं बात? सो द एक्स इज ए नॉर्मल गुड। एंजल कर्व के बारे में जानते हैं आप लोग? Have you heard about Angel's curve? You know, the Angel's curve basically tells you the proportion of your consumption or proportion of your income that you actually have on consumption. When your income is low, what do you do? When your income is low, what
We
do you
consume
do?
less, but not less than the necessities.
Anyway, like, you know, this we were talking about the angel curve. The angel curve is basically, you know, like the curve that shows that how different households change their expenditures when the price of when their income changes. So you can see here that this curve is an upward sloping curve, and what is happening with the quantity of this series, these quantity of CDs is increasing when your income is increasing. The quantity of CDs is increasing as your income is increasing. So the curve that shows that how the consumption of certain good increases when your income increases is called the angel curve. All right. So if you draw this
Yes,
curve,
sir.
you can make this curve. Now, what happens? Effect of a rise in income on the demand of an inferior good. I was telling you, like, you know, the other example that we did was of normal good. And how do you define inferior good? Can anybody define inferior good for us?
Sir, the more
what?
Sir, the more the income increases, the less we consume that good.
Income, with the income increase in income, if you decrease the consumption of something, that is called inferior good. Like, say for example,
sir.
second-hand clothes. If you buy second-hand clothes more, and because your income is low, if your income increases, you do not increase the consumption of second-hand clothes. Rather, what will you do?
We will reduce its consumption.
Yeah, and there are so many kinds of goods which are inferior. Like, say for example, some brands which you use, like, say for example, some oil, some ghee, say for example, some spices that you use of lower quality when your income is low. If your income increases, you do not increase their consumption, rather you decrease their consumption, and you go to the other brands. And that's what happened here. So income increases and your
Sir, इसमें
consumption
क्या
is
वो
low.
example?
जी
सर, क्या इसमें वो एग्जांपल भी आती होगी, जैसे अगर हम इनिशियली अगर आपके पास इनकम कम होती है तो आप ब्रांडेड क्लोथ्स, अगर आपका ब्रांडेड क्लोथ यूज ना करने का ये मकसद होता है, इनकम कम है, तो फिर आप बाद में ब्रांडेड क्लोथ्स के चले जाते हैं, तो ये भी इसका हो सकता है। नॉर्मली वो जो दूसरे कपड़े होते हैं वो इंफीरियर गुड्स वैसे नहीं होते,
हाँ,
लेकिन
लेकिन
अगर
देखिए
हम
इंफीरियर गुड कोई भी
इनकम
देखिए कोई भी गुड जो है ना वो
होती नहीं
एब्सोल्यूट
है
इंफीरियर गुड
नेचुरली।
नहीं है। जी जी बिल्कुल, वो हो सकता है आपके लिए इंफीरियर हो, किसी के लिए नॉर्मल हो।
यस सर।
देखिए जो चीज आपके लिए इंफीरियर है हो सकता है वो आपसे लोअर इनकम ग्रुप के लिए नॉर्मल हो, और जो आपके लिए नॉर्मल है वो हो सकता है आपसे हायर इनकम ग्रुप के लिए इंफीरियर हो। समझ रही हैं हम? तो आपके पास देयर इज नो एब्सोल्यूट इंफीरियर और नॉट एब्सोल्यूट इन नॉर्मल गुड। यस जी बोले। Yes, say again.
Sir, the inferior goods, it all depends on your income, basically.
Yes, it depends on your income. Yes. So here you can see that consumption of X has fallen, and why the consumption of X has fallen due to increase in income, because X is an inferior good. X is an inferior good. I hope it makes sense to you guys. So what happens if the price of any good changes? If price of X falls to £1, you increase the consumption of X. And this actually is the way you can drive the demand curve as well. Because when the price falls, say for example, what is happening with the price of X? Initially it was £2 and now it has fallen to £1. And due to decrease in the price, the quantity demanded has increased of X. So that shows the demand curve behavior of the individuals. This is called price consumption curve. That your price consumption increases when your consumption increases when the price decreases. So you can drive the demand curve here. At certain price, you are demanding at point A. If the price of X falls, you demand at point B. And if you just project these points here down the curve, so if you just project these prices and take the price on the y-axis, so you can see that the demand curve is a downward sloping curve. So this is demand curve. So this lecture ends here.